Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming and clearing off your cars and driving the roads this morning. I'm happy to be here and to be talking to you all a little bit about what happens to your waste and what happens to your recycling when it comes to ecomaine. Cumberland, North Yarmouth, a lot of the communities around here are ecomaine communities, meaning that your waste is processed at our facility. We're right by the jet port. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that's municipally owned, so we're owned by the communities that we service. So we are right around the jet port. We service around 73 communities all across the state, and that's growing. We have a pretty big footprint. I was just speaking. We actually go up to the Blue Hill, Surrey area. So down east, we go all the way down to New Hampshire, to the seacoast as well as in western Maine. So we're continuing to grow. We process about 1/3 of the state's waste at our facility, 1/3 of the state's recycling. So I'm here to talk to you today about what happens to your recycling and specifically what happens to your waste and really the inside scoop on what is going on at ecomaine. So once it's in the bin, where is it going? So I'm going to run you guys through a little recycling virtual tour here and then a waste to energy virtual tour. Do we want to hold questions till the end? I think we have a small enough group here that we could probably, if you have something that you really want to ask throughout, just raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll save discussion questions for the end. What about this? What about that? So we'll have a little question and answer at the end here. All right. So these are the materials we're able to accept at our facility. So we can take paper, we can take cardboard, metal, plastics, number 1 through 7. These do have to be rigid containers. So we'll talk more about the actual rules of what can and can't go into our bins. But we do ask that we take no flat plastics, no stretchy film plastics, and no molded plastics. That's a way to think about it. So plastic silverware, plastic straws, things that were put into like a mold in our small little items. They do have to be containers. They should have water, food, something in them at some point, but have now been cleaned out. And then we accept glass as well.
Could you just repeat the plastics that can't go?
Yeah, and we'll talk further about that. I go way more in depth on that, so just stay tuned on that one. This is our facility right here. These bales out front, this is our finished product at ecomaine. So these bales, they can weigh anywhere from 1,200 to 2,200 pounds, depending on what they are. But this is what we get our materials to. We take that single sort, everything gets put in one bin. It goes through mechanical sorting, robotical sorting, and manual sorting to get it into its designated category. And then they get compacted, turned into these bales, and then these bales will then go out to market, which we can talk a little bit about what that market looks like as well later on in the presentation. But just so you know, this is the finished product. We aren't actually making new materials at our facility. So we just separate it into its categories and then send them out to market to a company that then makes it into a new material, which I can, if you're interested as well, get the companies that we work with so you know exactly where they're going in the next step, because that's always a question, at least I have. It's really that cradle to grave. Once I put it in the bin, what's happening? Where is it ending up? What's it getting turned into? So the first step as it comes to ecomaine, and it goes right here through our scale house. So these are large cement pads. The truck will drive right onto it. The scale weighs the truck on the way in. We have 2 facilities. We have our waste to energy or incineration facility, which is that one in the background of this video. Right there. This is the waste to energy facility. That has its very own tipping floor, so trash goes directly to that. An entire other building is our recycling facility, which is where recycling would be dropped off on that tipping floor. So they're on separate floors and separate buildings. That's an important thing to know. On the way out, they'll get weighed, and they use that differential to calculate cost. So this is our recycling tipping floor. This is what it looks like. You can see they're doing an inspection of the loads that are brought to us. They're able to do this floor inspection, see if there's any kind of contamination, because then we can tie it directly back to the truck that brought it in. And then we can target the communities that are having higher contamination than other communities. This front loader then pushes all that material into the back corner. This is our drum feeder in the back, so that actually makes sure the correct amount of recyclable materials makes it onto our conveyor system to run through our entire facility. This entire process you're about to see, from the point it goes into that drum feeder to get onto the conveyor belt, through the whole sorting process, it only takes 3 minutes for it to get sorted into the correct category. If it's not sorted by the end, it just circulates right back through our system until it's properly sorted. So the first step is that it goes through a star separation process. So this right here is one of our recycling sorting stars. There's a bunch of these on axles. You can see them all here. So it's on axles, they're rotating really fast, and the cardboard surfs over the top of that. So because it's large, flat, it will actually glide right over the top, and then smaller recyclable materials fall through the cracks of this to continue to be sorted. Sometimes we'll lose some cardboard here that fall through the cracks. Those will get manually sorted on a hand sorting line after. So this gets the bulk of those large boxes out of the way. We do prefer these boxes to be flat and not big boxes that could jam up the machine or cause problems. I will say there's one pretty obvious problem going on here, and that is tanglers. So we have the same problem in this one, which is our paper separation process here. This is the same concept, only it's at an incline like that, because you think paper is flat and lightweight. It's going to float over the top. Everything else is going to fall with gravity. So the remainder of materials falls down. Paper floats over the top. There are some materials, however, that will act like paper in this process and contaminate the paper sorting process. So we have another set of manual sorters pulling out contamination. So contamination is a huge problem, or materials that came to us that aren't actually recyclable to begin with. They shouldn't have gone into the recycling bin. These will be sorted out, and this is taken to our waste energy facility. But that is the only stuff that is taken to waste energy from recycling is pulled out directly as contamination. We do expect that to be about 10% of our recycling stream. So it's a lot of material. So this paper is going to go right through the system, and it's going to get manually sorted for any kind of contamination. But as you can see here, once again, those tanglers cut right around those sorting stars. That's film plastics, that's holiday lights, extension cords. It can be, we've done audits on this too. It can be, people will throw away hair, believe it or not, and it gets cut around this. Textiles. So these actually have to get hand cut out every single day. We send staff in with knives, and they have to go into that confined space and cut out every single item that's been tangled. So it's a huge problem, but you think if we didn't do that, if we didn't clean this, all that material rubbing together, lots of friction, lots of heat, lots of paper and cardboard going through here, we could potentially get a friction fire in our facility. Fires are a huge threat to the recycling and waste world in general. So not all items are actually recyclable. We want to keep food waste out. We get a lot of recyclable materials that are still full of food. You know, people cleaning out their fridges and just throwing it in, believe it or not. All of this stuff, not only is it contaminating that item, because now you're throwing all this food away, it can open up, it can spill, it can get on other people's properly recycled materials. So it's really important to make sure that our materials are as clean as possible. I'm not saying you don't need to suds them up if you don't have, have the time. I think just a thorough rinse to make sure there's no food is great. It can be challenging with peanut butter jars. I know it's really there's a lot of items that can get sticky and everything, but just do your best to get it as clean as possible, and we do ask that lids stay on. So the lid will actually keep everything contained in the unit. And then you also think A lot of the times those lids are the same type of plastic as the actual container, even if it might look a little different. So that whole unit can then be recycled, whereas a lid on its own is a flat plastic that would not be able to be recycled. So you would otherwise have to just throw the lid into the trash can.
Why?
Because of that paper sorting process we just saw. So did you see all of those flat plastics could just act like a paper or a paperboard product and get sorted, acts the same way. They're lightweight plastic, thin, and they can just get sorted right into the wrong thing. They can fall through cracks in our system. So we have a size constraint as well. It's usually about 2 inches by 2 inches. So if it just goes through the system at the right spot, it could fall through. It might not be seen. That's another thing. Because it's flat, it could hide under things.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
I'm confused. The lid should stay on or not?
Stay on as one unit.
It's a twist cap.
Or even if it's a jam cap, the same thing. They stay on. They can pop off, but most of the time they stay on.
But otherwise, if it's on its own,
If it's on its own, you just have a cap that it would have to go into the trash.
oh,
You can think of this like a Dunkin' cup. If you get a hot coffee at Dunkin' and it's a cardboard cup, right? They have that paperboard cup with a plastic lid on the top. That plastic lid would not be able to go in the recycling. You would have to separate those. They're two different materials, right? So we can't take mixed materials. So anything that was, in that case, it's paper and plastic. The plastic lid would have to go in the trash, and the paper cup could then be cleaned out and put into the recycling bin. Yes?
So what about a glass jar with a metal lid? They both
Glass jar with metal lid is usually better because the glass gets broken up in a glass breaking process, so it gets turned into a glass substrate, and the lids will get pulled out by magnet.
Okay, so do you want them closed as well?
Those ones closed as well. And it just helps with the pre-sorting process. So when it's going through all of those star separation process, that's the most challenging thing. And this is a changing technology. We were built in 2005 too. We are having a new facility currently built. It should be up and running by 2026. That's what I've been told. I always add a good 6 months onto construction projects. So I would say late 26, early 27. And right across the street from us. So in this new facility, I believe there will be a new technology other than sorting stars that might make it easier for us. So the rules, as we'll talk about a little bit more, are ever changing as technology continues to advance. So just continue to inform yourself on what's going on with recycling. Yes?
So I understand you can recycle shredded paper in a plastic bag
Yes.
as long as it's see-through. So how do you guys handle that?
So that is all pulled out in pre-sort. So basically, they can see a plastic bag coming through. It has to be a clear plastic bag because then they can identify the paper, that shredded paper. They'll just pull it and then open it into the paper. So that's the way that would work. And then if it's cardboard, you think, or like a paper bag, if there's a paper bag full of paper, it's not going to get sorted into the paper because it's full. It's this big bulky bag. And it might get pulled off because they might just assume that it's full of mixed materials or trash. Who knows? They can't identify what's in it. That's why the clear is so important. So tanglers are a no-no. They can get caught in our machines, cause those friction fires. Food should stay out. Textiles are non-recyclable materials. Those they can go for textile recycling. Apparel Impact has a program. We can talk a little bit more about that, but it's called Apparel Impact. There's drop-off boxes that you can bring old clothes, more scrappy clothes than maybe you would to Goodwill, just because they have the means to send these to textile recycling facilities. But in a single sort facility, they're not acceptable. All right. I also just want to note here too, styrofoam is a non-recyclable plastic. It can crumble up. We don't see much styrofoam as much anymore now that there's more of a ban on that. There's a ban on it. We're not seeing as much. And I mean, there's some that slip through the cracks. A lot of companies are also adjusting their packaging material. So that's another benefit, and we're not seeing as much styrofoam, but not recyclable, very energy intensive to actually recycle that material because it's aerated. And batteries and propane tanks, any kind of dangerous material should not be going into the recycling. Knives shouldn't go in. We have hand sorters, so anything that could potentially hurt someone. Broken, like if a picture frame breaks, that broken glass should not go in the recycling bin because this can present a danger to our staff. Batteries are so common right now. We pull out a bunch of these lithium ion or rechargeable batteries. They can spontaneously combust. They can, if they're run over, if they have a lot of heat, they can combust, and they can cause because they're chemical fires. So they'll just keep going, these lithium ion fires. They have to be treated a whole separate way because they're a chemical fire. And when we have a whole facility full of cardboard and paper, it can present a big issue. And it has. We had many, many fires last year. I can't remember the exact amount, but I believe it was anywhere from 20 to 30 fires in our facility. These, our staff is trained on how to respond to these. We have regular drills with the Portland Fire Department. But fires are a huge concern. And a lot of these are also, we have a compactor that will make the bales, and we will see propane canisters come through, like camping stove containers. If these get compacted, or even through that star separator where everything's tossing and turning and getting that cardboard out in that first process, those are the big places that we'll see propane tanks explode. So that can cause fires as well. So anything that could combust should not go into your recycling bin. And unfortunately, it's tricky because a lot of these things are marketed as recyclable in one way or another. People just see the recycling symbol and throw them in their recycling bin when really they need to be brought to a specific place to be recycled, like a Lowe's, a Home Depot, transfer station, where they can be properly managed. So those are our big contaminants right now. Right here, this is our hand sorting line. This is where they're pulling out cardboard that was missed. They're pulling out contamination that they see in our recycling stream to make sure the product is as clean as possible. There's definitely materials that slip through. We have acceptable contamination amounts within our bales from the companies that purchase it. So there's different grades of materials. So we just fall into a different grade for different types of materials. The higher the grade, the more value that bale will have, the more money comes back to the recycling program. So better you can get the materials, the more value that they have. But a lot of this is done through manual sorting, which we face the same staffing problems that everyone's facing right now, where it can be, one day you could have 10 people, one day you could have 20 people, one day you could have 2 that show up. So it's definitely a challenge that the recycling facility faces. Another thing we're looking forward to in our new facility is being able to have more AI sorting or optical sorting, which I'll show you in a bit, that will allow us to focus that staff on quality control and contamination rather than doing some of the actual sorting. So pulling out the materials. So right here, this is our metal separation. So we have all of those materials that are still on the belt. So now paper and cardboard ideally should be out of the stream. This should be plastics, glass, and metals. So there's a big magnetic belt that goes over the top of the conveyor and pulls out any tin and steel or ferrous metals. Right here, this is actually our aluminum being repelled. This is a charged plate. This is a reverse eddy current, so it repels the aluminum into the correct bin. So you'll see aluminum kind of jumping into the correct bin. This could be aluminum foil that's crumpled into a ball. It could be aluminum cans. Aluminum's a non-ferrous metal, so it won't get pulled to that magnet. So we have to use this reverse eddy current to get that pulled out. And this is how we get out all of our metal materials. Then we have a glass breaking screen. So this is a bunch of those small stars. They kind of look like this, but they're small and they're metal. And they grind up that glass into a substrate. It looks just like this, and this can be used for a bunch of different things. We have an example today of countertops that have been made of recycled glass. I've got them right here. So this is a recycled glass countertop. You can see all of those flakes of glass on the inside there, and then it's got some kind of cement base to it to hold everything together. So that's a big market for it. You can also use this for road fill. So it can be used as clean fill for construction, for road work. In some places, the DOT will use it. We use it at our landfill for filling potholes. So that's an example right there. But that's what happens with our glass. Glass has a pretty low value, not much. So a lot of places are stopping taking glass, actually, because it's so heavy. So they're paying for the recycling of it, but the value isn't necessarily there. So there are sources, like places that want the material, but they also don't want to be paying a lot for it, basically. So it's a less valuable. This is an optical sorter here. So this is using a robot to basically scan down in, and it recognizes the resin code of the plastic materials on the belt, and it will sort out our number one, or PET plastic. So these are things like water bottles, soda bottles, egg cartons, salad containers. This is all sorted out using the resin code, which is that number one on the number on the plastic. We can find the resin code there. So if anyone does not know where to find the resin code, it's generally on the bottom. This one is right here, actually, and it's a triangle that will have a number one. So this is number one PET, this container. So this would be a number one plastic. These ones actually, Poland Springs are number one plastic. They never have the recycling symbol on the bottom, which is a challenge for us. They have it on the side here. But those are number one plastics. Basically any soda or water bottle is going to be that number one.
Tops on all of this.
We say tops on, yeah, everything. If you were just going to take that top, it would have just fallen through the cracks if it went into the recycling bin.
What
Yep.
about K-cups? Are they recyclable?
No, they're too small.
Even though it says on the bottom that they're recyclable?
Yeah, there's actually, I believe, a lawsuit against K-cups.
Oh.
You can
So you just go
you can look it up. They got in some trouble, I think. There's a lot of greenwashing claims that are made by companies that materials, and maybe in some facilities they are recyclable, but in the vast majority, they're not. So there's a lot of wiggle room within the recyclability marketing to be able to say something is recyclable. And they'll just kind of throw a recycling symbol, and it's very misleading to consumers. Yes?
Is the cap, can you assume the cap is also one?
For some of them, sometimes it won't be. A lot of companies have switched towards making that cap a number one. That being said, that amount of contamination will not be a problem. It still can go in. Yeah, that's completely acceptable. As we talked about, we had those acceptable contaminations. Same thing, like on that water bottle, has paper around the side, right? You could claim that's also contamination, but that's acceptable contamination. So that's what our acceptable contamination should be, is just below those limits. Through processing, things are removed. Yeah.
So paper on a can?
Yep, doesn't need to be removed. Yeah, it should be A-okay. So opticals are definitely the future of recycling. We'll probably have a lot more of these in our new facility. They take kind of the need for manual work out in that behalf. Not saying that we're not going to have any manual sorters. Our manual sorters will be used for quality control at that point, pulling out more contamination because we start to see more and more contamination in our facilities. So right here, this is our hand sorting plastic line. So the first person here is sorting our number two natural plastics. These are milk jugs, juice jugs, those opaque plastic rigid containers. Number two is colored. The second person is number two colored plastics. So this is the same type, HDPE plastic, but these have dyes added to them. So that would be laundry detergent containers, cleaning supply containers. Those thicker plastics, they're thicker than PET or number one, but they have dyes. So these are a lesser grade plastic than the natural because they're pre-dyed. So you can only go darker with them. They'll get combined together and you have to dye them another color. The natural ones can stay natural, or you could dye them. So these ones generally have a higher value. That's why we keep them separate. Either way.
Just referring to the color, right?
What was that?
When you say natural, you're just referring to the color.
Yeah, it doesn't have dye. It's just clear. It's like it doesn't have any kind. So that would be like your milk jugs and juice jugs. If you picture those, they're clear.
And they have the higher value, the clear ones?
Yep, they're higher value because you can add any dyes to them, or you could keep them as a natural. So this, either way, both of them are high value plastics. All number 2 plastic has much higher value. Same with number 1 plastic than a 5, a 6, a 7. There's more market for them. So they're generally going to continue to keep that high value, whether they have dyes added or not. Just the natural ones overall will just be a little bit above the ones that have dyes added to them. And then the last category is our numbers 3 through 7 mixed plastics. So that's going to be basically all of the remaining get commingled into one category, our mixed plastics. These are a low-grade plastic product, will be turned into probably more lower-grade plastic products. Once they kind of reach this point, and these types of plastics are, I always say, are the best ones to avoid, just because the market is not there. And in a lot of places, they won't actually accept these. This is what our communities want us to do, so we make sure we have a market for our mixed plastics. And there is one. They go to EFS Plastics right now, which processes them all. So we do have a market for them. That being said, it's very low compared. We might spend more money sorting these than we actually do on the return for it. Yes?
Based on our reading in our household, we decided to just discard 3 through 7
Okay.
because it's such low value and it's a hassle for you to deal with it. So,
Well, we're going to deal with it no matter what. That's the thing. It depends on where. I would say it always depends on which recycling facility it goes to. I would still say throw it in the recycling bin because it can be processed, and we do have an end market for these mixed plastics, the 3 through 7s. So generally, we want to see those recycled if possible. But as I said, the best thing we can do is just avoid them if possible to begin with. Yes?
Can you talk more about the molded products, plastic products that you said you don't want? You talked about plastic utensils.
So plastic utensils would be, those are often, would end up in, it would be like a mixed plastic, one of the later 3 through 7s. Straws, sometimes it can be, think about if you get toothbrushes and those have those molded plastics. They're like surrounding, there'll be a cardboard backing with like a plastic over the top and the toothbrush is in it. Same goes with pens. Those have a molded plastic on them, so they're flat, and then there's a cardboard backing. Sometimes those are the big ones that come to mind.
What about the plastic cups that are, so they're sort of like rigid?
Solo cups.
Yeah.
Solo cups? Solo
Yeah.
cups are okay. Yes, those ones, if they're rigid containers, they are A-okay. So the cups should be good to go. And you're just going to want to make sure they're 1 through 7 on them, which they should be, because 7 is just miscellaneous plastics. One thing I will say is with the cups specifically, one thing you want to be careful of is PLAs. So those are compostable plastics, which we see a lot of. Great if they have an industrial composter to go to, but they don't. And there's no real place that PLA or compostable plastics can go to in Maine, and they also will be a problem in the recycling process. Basically, they act too much like plastic in our composting programs that we have, and they act so different from number 1 plastics, which is where they'll get sorted into, or mixed plastics, that it becomes a problem. So they have a very different I believe it's a melting point that has a big difference. So they cannot go into recycling.
Here's
Yeah.
a question of as a consumer dealing with this. So I encountered this going to what was a pretty organic-oriented, bagel shop, and they said all of our utensils are compostable. I said, great, and then I read that they're really not compostable unless they go to a facility that's specially able to treat
Yeah.
them. I can't go in, I can't put it in my own compost pile.
No.
So I feel as though that's somewhat misleading.
Yes, very misleading.
Particularly in
And
Maine, because there's no facility that can handle it in the first
There's
place.
no facility in Maine that can handle. AgriCycle is one that will accept them, but they won't break down in their process. These will come back actually to ecomaine. We have a partnership with them where they're materials that don't, because they can take packaged materials at AgriCycle as well, and they run it all through a depackaging process. If it acts like packaging, it's going to actually come back and go to a waste to energy facility, to our waste to energy facility. So that's how the program works. So a lot of this packaging, even if they accept it, it just runs through the depackaging process. The organics get separated. Organics go into their anaerobic digester. Anything that acts like packaging, which you think a plastic cup would, plasticware, these would basically come right back to ecomaine, where they would go through a waste to energy.
Are you going to get to anaerobic digestion later?
We can talk a little bit about it. I love talking about anaerobic digestion, but I can do kind of a crash course. I'm not sure I have a slide. I might. I can pull another one up. I can pull it up from another presentation and kind of go through anaerobic digestion if that's something people are interested in.
Well, I'm interested. I'm
Yeah.
dedicated. I'm chair of the sustainability committee.
Yeah, okay.
And we're tackling food waste.
Okay.
As an issue this year.
Yeah.
So there's two pathways that food waste can go. They can go to a compost pile, natural compost, or they can go to an anaerobic digester. In anaerobic digestion, it's not compost.
No.
It turns into a
Biogas,
gas
yeah.
and goes into electricity. And so the question is, which is the more noble approach? Our bias is composting is better.
I would agree.
But that's going to be a challenge for us because we don't offer free waste recycling like Falmouth does.
Oh, organics.
Organic
Yeah.
food waste.
Yeah.
And Portland, but that's all going the anaerobic digestion route through AgriCycle, which
Yep.
goes up to Exeter. And so can you? Well, that's just a question we're tackling this year to decide what to do in our town
Okay.
with food waste. So do you have a point of view on?
I do have a point of view. I am going to bookmark that one for the end of the discussion, just so we can talk a little bit more, because I'm happy to talk all day about anaerobic and compostables. It's kind of something, it's very interesting, especially people aren't aware of the options that we have in our state. It's really garbage to gardens where it's going to a compost pile that doesn't get hot enough to take any kind of PLAs. Not to mention there's also PFAS concern with PLA plastic. It's still plastic-like materials. So we can talk, I'll talk all about that at the end, yes.
And I'm just trying to wrap my brain around
Yeah.
exactly what this is. So you're talking like if you go to a salad bar place and they have the brown containers now instead of that are plastic lined cardboard versus like is that what you're talking about?
No,
Or
so the
particular-
paper ones actually have a chance. Those ones, if they say they're compostable and they're more of like a paper, they can actually absorb some of the food liquids and stuff in the organics, so they might actually degrade like so those ones are usually the ones that I'm more positive about. The ones we're referring to that they look exactly like plastic, but they have a green leaf on them and a green, and they'll say PLA plastic. PLA is it's I think a polylactic acid. I believe that's what. Anyway, it's their chemical makeup, and they're made of it's a plant-based plastic, basically. So what we're seeing here, everything's been sorted into its correct category. This is our Harris baler. So this basically compacts all of those recyclable materials, and then we wrap them with baling twine. They get any kind of contamination, you just saw someone pulling out contamination on the outside. If there's outside contamination that's physically pulled out, if something has too much, they just assume the entire bale is contaminated. That's when they'll take that forklift, drive it right back up to our tipping floor and open the bale. And it goes right back through the sorting process. So if something looks too contaminated, it's going to get reopened and resorted. And then it gets loaded onto one of those trucks that then takes it to market. Yeah.
What do you do with the stuff like batteries and light bulbs that you pull off of the belt? Do you guys recycle that
Yes.
sort of
So
thing?
batteries go to call to recycle. So that gets recycled. Light bulbs are usually broken, I believe, at that point.
CFLs? The old CFLs that are
Those
still-
ones, I don't know how many they see, but that would end up going to a battery recycling if there was still some that were in good shape. Any of that stuff would get pulled out and taken to the proper. We can't put that to waste energy, and nothing that's e-waste. We can't take freon containing. We can't take any of that kind of stuff. So that just has an alternate recycling program that we would send it out to, that we have partnerships with. So these are all things that can be made of recyclable materials. We talked about the countertop. This right here, this is Trex. This is a decking that's made out of, or like wood composite material that's made out of HDPE. So that would be the milk jugs, juice jugs, cleaning supply containers. This could be a dyed HDPE because they dyed it a darker color. This can be used just as a replacement for traditional lumber. It has like a wood pulp and HDPE makeup. They make play sets, picnic tables, benches, decks, you name it, out of this plastic lumber. Plastic building supplies has become bigger and bigger, as I'm sure we're all aware of here. Plastic siding, vinyl siding was a big thing. Now they're making siding out of different types of plastic that are easier to deal with. HDPE is a big one, PET. There's a company called Edura in Woolwich, Maine, that's making structure insulated panels, so prefab panels for walls that are made of PET plastic. So building supplies are a big one. Textiles are big with soda bottles and water bottles. A few of us were talking beforehand about just recycled polyester. So this right here is a carpeting material that's made of recycled number 1 PET plastics. This bag was also made of that. We wear a lot of jackets and stuff. This is an LLB vest. It's made of recycled polyester. A lot of big companies are starting to make a switch towards these post-consumer recycled materials. So if you ever see that recycled polyester, that's soda bottles and water bottles. Newspaper can get turned into all sorts of paper products. Sheetrock for walls. Kitty litter can actually be made of paper, certain kitty litters. New paper products. And yeah, metals get melted down. They can get turned into a lot of different things because of their ability to mold. So appliances, car parts, bike parts, building parts. These are rules of plastic. So starting with, does it have a number 1 through 7 on it? Is it a hard or rigid container? So we don't want anything that's soft, stretchy. We don't want mesh. So you think about the plastic that onions might come in, or clementines, whatever that might be. Would be a tangler. And it's got to be a container, so it had to have held something at some point. If you're unsure, we have our own info line. You can always give us a call in business hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We have our info line covered, so directly call us at ecomaine. We also have an app and a web browser page called our Recyclopedia, where you can actually look up a material, and it will direct you to the correct location of where it should go, whether that's recycling, whether that's a reuse, hardware store, transfer station. It will give you a direction on that. This also is for non-recyclable products, so if there's a trash item, maybe it's mattress or light bulb, these are all things that have a lot of confusion around them. So we have an app, and we also have a web browser. Yes?
The plastic decking.
Yes.
Now, I got pieces left over from decking.
Mm-hmm.
Is that recyclable?
No, because it has wood pulp in it now. So Trex, that would be a producer responsibility thing where the producers should be coming up with a end of life for their product.
So they got wood, so there is wood in that then?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So there's like a wood pulp that they use in it. Yeah, and it's mixed in with the plastic, is my understanding. So if you have that extra decking and stuff that cannot go into your recycling bin, that would become construction debris. We always say try to use what you only, what you need. If you can, use Restore to bring leftover building supplies and stuff like that, swap shops, things like that. But yeah, that's one of those things. And same thing, like with this jacket, I can't throw this in the recycling bin, even though it was once a water bottle. Once it's been turned into that new product, it has a whole different life cycle.
You don't recycle old clothes and stuff?
No, we cannot recycle. We don't do anything with textiles at our facility. We do direct people to Goodwill, to Apparel Impact, Salvation Army drop-offs, but we don't take any textiles.
But they don't want the old reject stuff.
Apparel Impact will take it. Apparel Impact will take it. Yeah.
At the town hall.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say, their website doesn't have like a map or anything of their drop-off locations, but if you call them, they'll tell you. And now that you know the name Apparel Impact and the logo, it's just an AI, you're going to see them everywhere. That's how I say once I know something, I like start seeing them all over the place. So, what was that?
I said there was one on Route 1 going up towards Freeport in Yarmouth also.
Mm-hmm.
There's also one at the town hall, right?
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah, they're all over the place now.
yeah.
Yeah, you'll find them once you have your eyes open for
Do
them.
you guys recycle your recycle bins? Because they get so beat up. Mine's like
So,
it's on its last.
Yeah,
leg.
if you have one that needs to be, we do have a bulky rigid recycling. We do ask, don't put them in your curbside bin. Like don't, like
Break 'em up.
they can't go in the truck. But if you bring them directly to us at ecomaine, we should be able to just throw them in our bulky rigid. Yeah, that's one of those exception things where we don't want super large items. We don't want anything bigger than a 5-gallon. We don't want 5-gallon buckets. We don't want the kitty litter buckets. Those can damage our machinery. If you have those, take them to transfer stations. Transfer stations sometimes have like a rigid area. I don't know what the yeah, you guys have different. So I would just take it to Riverside or to ecomaine, and we should be able to accept it. You can email me directly if you have one that you were trying to get rid of. I always say just email one of the people who work there and we can work something out with you guys. So trash as well. We're talking about trash as well. This is where all of your trash goes. This is our waste to energy facility. This was built in 1988. Before that, we were just consolidating raw waste using actually that recycling baler that used to be our trash baler. And we started as Scarborough, Cape Elizabeth, South Portland, and Portland that traded in their municipal landfills for a jointly owned landfill. It was 240 acres in just over like 2 miles down the street from us towards Westbrook. So that's where our landfill is today. It's no longer raw waste landfilling, it is ash landfilling. So we have an ashfill, that's what we'll also refer to it as. That is where the ash from our waste to energy facility is then landfilled. Right now there's no way we can, there's people looking into it, but there's not really any way that we can use this ash for anything. It's not it still has the chemicals and everything from being trashed in it. So it's not something that has a use. So it is contained the same way raw trash would be at a landfill. There are a lot of benefits to waste to energy, which you're about to get into. But yeah, it originally started, that landfill it was regional waste systems is what we started as, and it was a jointly owned landfill. And then they grew to more than 20 towns to create this waste to energy facility. These are our 20 owner communities. And the waste to energy building allowed us to process the waste, reduce the tons going to the landfill. We were able to reduce the amount of volume it was taking up by 1/10 of its original volume, as well as reduce emissions related to the trash by around 90% through a waste to energy facility rather than raw waste landfilling, which raw trash landfills produce a lot of methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. Yes.
My understanding is that the electricity you generate here is considered renewable and is in the same quality as solar panels and I'm quite sure that's the case.
I don't know if it's the same quality of renewable
Well,
as
it's-
solar
it's-
would be, but it still is renewable.
It's viewed as not carbon-free, in effect.
It is right now qualified as renewable. I know there's a lot of questions about what determines renewable energy and whether trash is a renewable resource, which is
That
questionable.
was part of the debate that went through that the
Yeah.
last time, a couple of years ago, and I think that the legislature came down that it was renewable.
Yes,
So we can
and
be-
it still is determined as, yeah, it's renewable right now. So it's renewable energy that's being produced through the facility. So the trash that comes to us, it starts out in the tipping hall. This is kind of the great layout of what our facility looks like here. But the tipping hall is where we're going to start our journey here, right over there. This is what it looks like. This is, I believe, Portland. It's pay as you throw. I believe they're purple bags. We can always tell which community's which by the color of their pay as you throw bags. But this is one of the trucks dumping off the trash after a trash day here. We have a big front loader that comes in and pushes all of this trash off of our tipping floor and into our waste holding bunker that holds around 4,000 tons of trash. We process about 175,000 tons of municipal solid waste, or MSW, every single year. From what comes to our facility, about 50% of this is from residential waste, and 50% can be commercial, so businesses, restaurants, production, things like that will come to us. So this all ends up going through into our waste holding bunker, where it's going to go to be burned. There are materials that we were just talking about that we can't accept. Any Freon containing units, air conditioners, refrigerators, these go to be recycled. They take the Freon out and then use the metals for scrap metal recycling. Call to recycle processes our batteries. These are things we accept at our facility for a fee because they get put over in a separate location and then we pay a company to come and recycle them. So the fees are used to cover the cost of recycling. So we have, and then we'll accept mattresses, some bulky furniture, things like that. Once again, we promote the waste hierarchy, so making sure people are taking these to alternate locations for reuse, rehab before to be able to be fixed and things like that. But we do receive that kind of material. So the next spot, it's pushed by the front loader into our waste holding bunker. This is what holds around 4,000 tons of trash. That crane is rated for 4 tons, just for a visual on how big it is. I like to kind of give an idea. These bays right here, these are big enough for an 18-wheeler to get through. If we're talking size, I would say that area where the bookshelf is to here, and that whole corner of the room right here is about the size of that crane. So we have 2 of those that are picking up waste, making sure that the doors are cleared so trash can continue to get pushed in. So that's them mixing it up too. They're going to want to mix things up so we don't have just a load of food waste, because food waste or kitchen bags are going to have a lot of organic material in them, and those are wet. So it doesn't burn the same way as maybe if you had a bunch of wood that just came in, or cardboard. So they try to mix everything up the best they can before it goes into our boilers. Important to know, all of this stuff is brought to us. If it's brought to us as trash, it's treated as trash. We don't do any sorting on our tipping floor. We're not sorting out organics or recyclables. It'd be great, but we're not built for that. We don't have staffing for that. It could be potentially dangerous going through trash bags and stuff. So yes, did you have a question?
Yeah, so food waste. We talked a lot about this with our beloved town manager, Bill Shane, who was,
Yeah.
And Bill always had the statements in our climate action plan that Cumberland's waste going to you 40% of it is food waste. Is that a number that makes sense?
Yes,
to you?
yeah, we expect around 40%. And they're coming out, the DEP just did a waste audit on it's a waste study across the state on, they came and sampled our trash actually 2 times this year. The report should be coming out soon with updated numbers on how much is organic
But
material.
40% makes sense to you?
Yeah, for household trash, we usually say around 40%.
Thank you.
30 to, I would say 30 to 40. I have a pie chart with the
Yeah.
breakdown in a second here.
When they pick up
Yep.
our trash in Cumberland, they have one truck, right?
Mhm.
For then the recycle and the
Yep,
trash.
split truck.
Well, the picture that you showed from Portland, it looked like they were just dumping the whole thing, like it was.
I think
one-
that's I think it's an old video because they have
Oh, okay.
they have some different.
So they
trucks.
just close one side off when they.
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
right?
and
Okay.
and when it tips, yeah, it doesn't go out like they don't open the recycling door, so it would still look like it was just tipping. But yeah, so they have, and they still not all trucks are split trucks. Casella has mostly split trucks, but there's a lot of companies that still are
So
just
they come
regular
with two
trash
different
trucks, and then
trucks.
they'll come with the recycling. Yeah. So a lot of the greater Portland area is on a split truck, but a lot of places are still using regular. And a lot of towns actually will have compactors as well. So transfer station style communities, they'll just bring everything to one consolidated compactor, and then that compactor comes to us and then gets dumped. And there's a recycling one and there's a trash one. So this gets picked up and it gets brought to our hoppers. We have a ram that jams all of this material down into our boilers, and a great system that carries that trash through our boilers. Trash is our fuel, so that, you think about having a campfire, you use wood. Trash is what we're burning. That's our fuel. We have to constantly keep our boilers fed with trash. We run 24 hours a day, 365. So there's constantly trash being processed at our facility unless we're in an outage period. Right here, this is Falmouth waste. You can see they're yellow bags. But this goes down through the boilers, and you will notice that there's a lot of materials that aren't actually trash. We just said 40% of that's probably organic material. We get wood that could have been reused, cardboard. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be in the trash that's just thrown in it because it's easy. But yeah, so this goes down into the boilers, burns at around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which reduces that volume by 90% of its original volume. This is a visual of what the inside of our boiler looks like in an outage period when it's not full of trash and it's been all cleaned off. This is day to day what it would look like is hot fire. But we have all these pipes that run along the insides of the walls. Those pipes carry water. That water evaporates in that high heat to a steam. And then actually they'll run that steam up through the gases because the gases are going to be even hotter. They superheat that steam, so it's a super high pressure steam. And this is run through a turbine and a generator to create that electricity. And then the trash makes it all the way down through our grate system. So it can be completely, we want full combustion when we're processing trash. We don't want to burn something partially. So we're looking for full combustion, so we have to control the speed of how fast the different materials are going through to make sure that it turns into the full ash. But we also have gases, that are rising off of this, and we need to treat those because we're centrally located. We don't want gases going into our atmosphere that are toxic, and so we're going to get to pollution control in a second here. But we're able to create around 100,000 megawatt hours of electricity every year, which is enough to power all of our vehicles that we run. We have electric vehicles at our facility that are powered by our plant. It runs our waste to energy plant, as well as our recycling facility. We're our own little island, run on our own electricity we're producing. So if everyone in the state has a power outage, we're probably still going to work. And it powers around 15,000 main homes. That's enough to power every year. So lots of electricity being produced.
But you consume most of it at your facility?
We use, I believe, about half of it internally. And then on top of that, enough to power 15,000 main homes. So internally, our vehicles, and then enough to power 15,000 main homes on top of that. So
It's a great story.
yeah.
It really is a great story.
Yeah, it's quite cool. So then we have a pollution control system. So we have a lot of gases coming off of this. These are very rigorously monitored by the DEP and the EPA. It's all reported to them. Any kind of changes in what gases are coming out are going to, have fees associated with them. We can get fines if we exceed limits. So we stay far below regulated limits. We have our pollution control system in place, which we use a nitrogen oxide removal system. We have a nitrogen or a lime slurry. No. This is the urea that's sprayed on for controlling our nitrogen oxide. So urea is actually sprayed into our boilers on top of the waste. Then we have an activated carbon that injection bonds with mercury and dioxins to carry those out. And then we have a lime slurry at this point, which is what we call our candy canes, that's sprayed into our candy canes. That lime slurry is used for any kind of acid gases, so it neutralizes those acid gases. And then everything runs right here through a particulate removal system, or an electrostatic precipitator. These are these large charged plates, charged curtains. The gases will run through it. They attract particulate matter to them, and then they'll vibrate and drop the particles down onto a belt. We call this collecting our fly ash, which is the ash that got up into the gas stream. So we collect that fly ash and actually combine it with the bottom ash, and that will go to our ash fill. So that takes all the particulates out. And then we have our pollution control tests, or our continuous environmental monitoring system. So we're constantly monitoring for all of the pollutants. And we're removing the NOx, the mercury and dioxins, sulfur dioxide, and acid gases. So what's actually coming out of our stack is about 96% water vapor, and then carbon dioxide. We do emit pollution. We're not saying that it's perfect. It's still processing trash, right? We don't want to be creating trash to begin with. So there is, and even water vapor, that's a greenhouse gas, H2O, right? H2O and carbon dioxide are both greenhouse gases. So basically that's what's going into the atmosphere. That's why a lot of people will see our stack on some days when it's really cold. You'll actually see steam. In the summer, people think that sometimes that we're just turned off, but we're not. It's just you can't see it because it's warm outside, and there's no cloud in the atmosphere. What were you going to say?
I think it was last year, guys ran into a problem, and it was like emitting pink
Yes.
clouds.
Yeah, it was pink clouds. Yeah.
What
so
was that?
It was iodine is what got through. So, which is not a material that should ever make it to a waste to energy facility. It's happened at other waste to energy facilities. It's one of those things that it ended up, it must have been in a large amount that got into our system. And they shut the stack off as soon as they saw it. But it was, they still take several hours to come offline because they're burned. You can't just shut off the gas. You're shutting, you have to let everything burn through. So it was a problem. That was a huge problem that we had. And I think what the big concern was how visible it was as well, because it burns pink, which is obviously a huge concern to everyone, and to employees as well.
Where it came from?
We did a whole study, and there was a whole case on trying to figure out where it came from. They talked with anyone who could have potentially dropped it off, like the big ones we hit. Made sure that hospitals were double checking, making sure nothing, because they use iodine for cleaning and stuff. So hospitals were talked to. They use it for photos, for developing photos. So there were some companies that developed photos, and they were taught. So there was all these different companies that they just reached out to for more education, making sure this, and iodine's controlled. That needs to be going to if you're using iodine, that should be going to a different facility to be processed for hazardous material. So the fact that it came to our facility was the problem to begin with. It got on our tipping floor. We checked cameras. There was a big thing, but I don't think they ever, my understanding, at least I don't know exactly where it came from. I know there was
a liquid that got in there, or?
I think it can come in liquid form and non-liquid form. I don't think it's always like, even if it's just film photos, I think film photos can actually cause, I think, because they have, there's something, anyway, the environmental team was on it, and it was a big, huge thing. If anyone hasn't seen it, you can look it up. Unfortunately, it was the month the Barbie movie came out as well, which was, people were talking all over the internet about that one.
I didn't hear what you said, the month that what?
The Barbie movie came out. It was, I think, actually the day after the Barbie movie came out. There were some people, there were some people talking about gender reveals and anyway, yeah. So it's all over the internet. If you just look up pink vapor, it will come right up. Yeah, it was a pink vapor of some sort, and it was, we assume it was iodine. Iodine is not even something that's monitored for, because it's not usually something that comes through our stack. So.
How did you know when and how to restart the machinery?
Well, that was the problem. That's why it started the next day too. So, so it was one morning. It was maybe midday, I would say. It was the first time it happened. It was in our A boiler, because we have two boilers that are exactly the same. It was in our A boiler. Whatever the materials, you just saw we mix it all together. So it got probably mixed in. They had a claw, they put it in. That went through, we took that boiler down. And they were like, clean, that was not getting burned, right? So that boiler was taken down. The next morning, they're still running boiler B at that point. Boiler A is shut down. Next morning, boiler B's going, gets a mixed load of whatever was in the A boiler, and boiler B starts burning the pink smoke, so that they had it again. And then they had to take boiler B down. So it was one of those things that they were really hoping that all of it was in that first boiler, but it ended up, it had been mixed, and we have crane operators in our crane that keep an eye out on the materials as they come into the facility, and they're pulling out, suspicious things. If barrels come, they'll make people open them. And there's on the tipping floor too. That's something that's our front loader. There's someone before pushing it into the bay, they are observing the loads that are dropped off. So that's something that we've heightened, is our monitoring for this stuff. And before that, it should even be identified at the scale house. If you have anything that can't go into our facility. As I said, like Freon containing, all that stuff has to be identified before, but somehow it slipped through. It literally could have been someone residentially that had a bunch of iodine, was doing a basement clean out or something, threw it in their trash cans, or it could have been anyone when it came down to it. The amount of waste that we received, nothing looked like out of the ordinary. But anyway, pink was definitely a huge concern. Yes.
Does the facility have backup batteries? So you're generating this electricity, and then you were down for 2 days or something.
Yeah.
So you're not generating any electricity. Do you have backup batteries?
Yeah, we have a generator, so we have electricity on deck. We can also tap into the grid if we need
But
to.
do you have backup, or do you?
Yeah, we have backup. We do have a backup power, but it doesn't run all of our things. But it will run the facilities, and then we have but the plant will go offline. But the important stuff is always, this control panel is always running. But my computer might not be able to use the backup unless I switch it. We have a specific backup outlet, so it all comes from our backup generator. And then we also have, we have the ability to tap into the grid if need be. But usually they try to get back on as soon as possible. So anyway, So pollution control is, I guess we kind of talked all about this. I don't want to keep talking about it, but something that we definitely continuously monitor. This is all public as well, so you can request this. We're a public entity. So ash goes down to the ash conveyor belt, gets loaded into an ash truck, and taken to our ash fill, which is our ash landfill, which is about 2 miles down the street. That's what was originally that raw waste landfill when we started in the 70s. So before waste to energy and recycling, all waste took up a lot of space in landfills. I'm sure everyone, there was even landfills town to town, you know, it was, so a lot of those have since been closed. There's still landfills in our state that accept raw trash. And there's a lot of challenges with it. There's land use. They take tons of space. You think by just even an ash fill, our ash fill takes up a lot of space. And that's after consolidating it and burning it and creating it into ash. So that's 90% reduction in its volume. So raw waste is taking up a lot. Methane emissions come from landfills. So they have significant methane production, leachate. So any kind of runoff from the landfills, you think about everything that goes in there. Pests, so you can see here, seagulls, you can get deer, you can get the air blowing trash away from the landfill into the surrounding wildlife. I know a big one, we have the Juniper Ridge landfill. It's our largest state-owned landfill in the state of Maine. That actually borders right up to the Arundel Wildlife Refuge. So any kind of breeze could, blow the trash into the surrounding area. And then costs. There's also costs associated with landfills. They have extremely high costs to upkeep, and then even after closure, you still need have costs associated because you continue to upkeep them past their open life. So here's a question for you all. So if we continue to make the choices that we are and continue to throw things away at the same rate, how many years is it going to take to fill all of Maine's open landfills? So we can't create new landfills in our state right now. So of the landfills that exist, how long do we think we have until we are out of space?
29 years.
Yeah, we got, anyone think 16?
I
think 16.
22? 22? All right, 22. 29. I heard a 29. What about 43? 43 more years. It is actually only 22 years until we are filled. So we have no space. And then you think, what do we do with our trash? And there are states right now that can no longer accept trash in their own landfills and are actually exporting trash out of state. So it creates a big concern. So it's important that we're doing our best to reduce the amount of material
How long
out
is
of.
your ash fill going to last?
So we just did an expansion internally. So we just created a new cell that I think that one's 8 years. And then we have another cell that we can do after that. It's another 8 years. I think we've got like 30 or 40 years on our 30 years, I think, on our ash fill. But even so, that's still coming up, still within my lifetime. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. This right here is the makeup of our waste by the top 9 major categories. So of the trash that we're producing, what's that look like? This is from a waste study that the University of Maine did. I believe it was back in 2011. 43.28% they found was organic materials. This is household trash, so this would not be including commercial. This is just household trash. About 25% was paper or paper products of some sort, recyclable for the most part, right? Unless they're contaminated. Plastics made up 13.44%. I'm sure with our new waste study that just was done this year, we're going to probably see an uptick in how much plastic there was. We also have 88 categories that they're now sorting the waste into instead of 9. So that will be interesting to see. I think they even went deeper into batteries with lithium-ion batteries versus, alkaline batteries, and e-waste has more category. Everything has more categories. But around 13.44% plastics. A lot of that is probably not recyclable plastic as well. You think about all the plastic that we use in our day-to-day life that can't go into the single sort bin. Saran wraps, clothes, textiles, a lot of that stuff is plastics, furniture, random, we see it all over the place. Waste is about 6%, so what's actually, or 5.77% is actually truly trash waste that doesn't have another category. C and D is construction and demolition. That also needs to go to a separate category. It shouldn't be going into household trash. That makes 3.35%. Metals is 3.26. Glass is 2.7. Household hazardous waste. These also there's collection days for this. You can bring them to the Environmental Depot in Lewiston. Riverside does collection days on the first Saturday of the month, I believe, April through November. Electronics made up 1%. I guarantee that the electronics have gotten so much bigger. So it'll be interesting to see the updated numbers. Yes? Did you?
On your ash,
Mm-hmm.
do you test for forever chemicals?
Yes. So there's PFAS testing, same as any other landfill would have. We are also
Do they
contained
have-
the same way. Yep. There's PFAS in ash as well as there is in, and everything. It's everywhere. And the PFAS, there's removal systems that are becoming more and more out there. However, very expensive to do PFAS mitigation. Right now that's contained, which is good, in barriers at the landfill. But yeah, it's still one of those things. We do see lower levels of PFAS though, where it's ash than raw waste, where the raw waste was. So definitely through the processing, it's able to break up, because PFAS does end up breaking apart at certain temperatures, high temperatures. So depending on what molecule it was, it can potentially break up. But we're still seeing PFAS in our facility at the Asheville. Yes?
When you put your recycles out and it rains or snows, is
Yep.
that a problem with recycling them?
Like last night, if we had our recycling?
Yes.
Not usually, unless it's like breaking apart the paper or the cardboard.
But it's okay if the paper gets wet.
It will usually dry fairly quickly. Paper, unless it like tears, it breaks apart. I would say that's so the cardboard normally won't break apart. It will still sort the same way, even if it's wet. And it will get baled, and it shouldn't be, it's not too much of a problem. It's not like it's scrapping the whole recycling bin. Yes?
Following up on the PFAS question.
Yep.
Am I right to assume that once it's in your ash fill, it's staying there?
Yeah,
So it's contained?
It's contained. And any kind of runoff leachate that we have from the landfill, that's all monitored. And then that ends up going, once again, it goes to the water district, and then it's monitored again. So everything's getting, along the way, is being monitored. But it's contained, the ash at the Asheville. So this is our waste hierarchy, our state waste hierarchy here. It used to be EPA. They just changed it, I think, on a greater scale. So it's changed recently, but it's basically the same thing, just in a different shape, starting with reduction and reuse. So making sure we're reducing from the source, reusing where we can, then recycling, compost. As we were talking, kind of right now, compost and digestion are on the same plane. That's kind of up in the air as to whether we think compost is better or digestion. And I also kind of see these all on the same plane, the recycling, compost, digestion. I think it's really important that we're managing our organic waste, because the organic waste is what creates so many methane emissions. So the methane emissions often come from the breakdown of organics and food without the presence of oxygen in traditional landfills. So compost digestion, waste to energy, and then landfill. I like to note waste to energy is so low down. Yes, it is a way that we're able to process trash, but it's trash. You know, we really need to be focused on not producing as much trash. There's other ways that we can process our waste before it even comes to waste to energy. But yes, waste to energy is one step above landfill. We're able to create a renewable energy. We're able to reduce the amount of space we're taking up, and we're able to reduce the emissions related with the trash. So it does get one rung up above. So this is really the solution we have. And if you have any questions, now I can take more for discussion here. I know. Thank you. And I know there is also, I tabled the one about anaerobic digestion and compost and the difference that you had about the difference. So I don't know if we want to discuss that as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have some basic questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just, batteries, I'm still confused on.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Recycle, yes, or?
Not in a recycling bin.
No,
Not in your.
better trash. I'm talking about like regular AA alkaline.
Yeah, those cannot go into
Trash.
recycling. Trash. If
But
they're
then-
AA batteries, but don't save them all up in a plastic bag and throw the whole plastic bag in the trash. If you have a few from your clicker, your remote at home, those can go in, but mix it in. Don't just put a whole bag of batteries in your trash, I would say. If you have saved your batteries, I would take them to, I know like a store, Target I think has a drop-off, Staples does, take them to that. Yes.
Sorry, this is like speed round. I've been
It's okay.
keeping the list.
Well, and sorry, just going back to the batteries too. When they do go through waste energy, our facility is okay to handle small batteries in small amounts. We also have if they stay the metal, we also remove metals from our ash using a magnet, and then we are able to recycle some of the metal materials that go through our waste to energy facility as a post-burn metal. So there's
So do you
that
burn them,
option.
or do you take them out before you burn them?
They would get burned, but if they're still remaining, the metal piece is still remaining after in the ash, those get pulled out using a magnet. Yep, okay to burn, yes.
All right. These seem so nitpicky, but they're just
Okay.
things. Okay. Shampoo pump bottle.
Yep,
Pump goes in the
Trash.
stays-
Pump
oh,
goes in the
pump goes in
trash.
the trash thing.
So you think about
don't
that-
keep
that-
the cap on
yeah.
in that case.
don't put the cap on in that case. If it's a pump or anything with like a straw and like that, it's same as taking your straw out of, a cup. Like you want pumps out of your.
All right. You're going to solve a marital dispute here. Window envelope. Take the window out.
Nope.
Doesn't matter.
Keep it in, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. Same with like pasta bottle or pasta containers. The boxes, they're good to.
Tin
the window.
can, like aluminum can tops are flat. Are they a problem for you? Like,
Keep it on the. So when I use a tin can, open a can, I just bend it up and then I bend it back in. That's the best way to do it, I think. Clean the can, bend the lid back in. That way it's not sharp. Otherwise, I would say throw it in the trash because it could be sharp. It could be dangerous for. Or if you're able to throw it, if it's already off, you can throw it back in the can and then crunch it a little bit if you want to. Anyway, try to keep the lid on, part of the unit.
good. I'm going to take you to the supermarket and we're going to stand in front of the peanut butter. And if I have saved 1 million glass jars. I have them like, there's only
Yeah.
so many glass jars I can save.
Yeah.
Am I choosing a plastic peanut butter jar? Is that better environmentally if I want to be a conscientious person? Or is it better to choose the glass peanut butter jar if I'm not saving it to reuse?
I would say no plastic in general. I would say the choice, if you ever are choosing between something or plastic, never choose the plastic. Because then there's also microplastics that's a whole other conversation that we can have, and on human health, the impact that plastic has on human health. But that is, we could do a whole lot, maybe ocean plastics, we'll talk more about that. I know we will actually, so.
Okay, and the last question I have is books. And maybe this is an extended issue, particularly for me at a library, because I get a lot of donated books.
Yeah.
Some of them are mildewy, and I mean,
Yep.
I don't want people thinking we're throwing our books away when we're not, but sometimes.
Yeah.
So Can you recycle them?
Yes, but hardcovers tear the hardcover off, I would say. Paperbacks are usually good to throw in as all one. Take the hardcover off.
Why?
Because the hardcover it's just going to be a dense book. You think if you throw a dictionary in there, it can get sorted wrong. And then the mixed paper, it doesn't break down the same way when you're in the pulping process. So, and they often have plastic covers on them, like over the, like sheaths on them. So, yeah. So rip it off. And sometimes they're even fabric. Some of the older ones, they're like a fabric hardcover. The hardcovers might not be all paper. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious, the grocery stores take plastic,
Mm-hmm.
plastic bags. Where does that stuff go? And
These are great.
what happens to
So
it?
we don't process any of the
Right.
plastic films. I try to avoid plastic films the best I can. There was a great news clip. I think it was news. They did like a whole ABC News story on it recently. It's quite alarming. They like put air tags in and tracked it all across. And I think some of it does get properly recycled, but they debunked some of them that was actually not going to. So there's different ones, different places, certain companies that were more honest about where their films were going than others. That being said, Hannaford, this collection, I feel good about their collection. That goes to Casella. So Casella basically compacts all of that and sells it. It's low density polyethylene. So LDPE is like HDPE. It's the same kind of, it's high density polyethylene versus low density polyethylene. Same type of plastic, just different molds basically. HDPE is our number 2 plastic. So a number 2 natural that has a high value. So if you have bulk of that, they can actually go to companies like Trex. And I know Hannaford does work directly with Trex. So this type of material can be made of that. And so I think Hannaford's is good. But it can be processed like that. But there were some places sending it overseas, and that's, I think, where it gets a little questionable, what's going on with it. Yeah, very questionable. Great story, eye-opening to kind of see. Anyway.
Do you know
Yes.
anything about the company called TerraCycle?
Yep.
So they're good, right?
I don't know.
You don't know?
So I'm skeptical, actually. They say they can like recycle cigarette butts. They recycle, if there's anything, they can recycle it. And I'm just right there. They'll even take like mixed things and say it's like they're recycling. They like sort it and stuff. I'm very skeptical.
But they collect it separately. So you have separate boxes for the different types of things.
Yeah, which is better. I don't know. See, that's a question. I've tried to reach out to TerraCycle, and I'm more skeptical not of what their business model is, but more of the lack of communication I've received. Like I haven't heard. Even in my previous job before I even worked at ecomaine doing sustainability, I was trying to get to the bottom of that because we were using TerraCycle where I was working for like snack bags. I was sustainability coordinator at Sugarloaf Ski Mountain, so our ski school had like a bunch of snack bags and stuff, and we would use those TerraCycle things. And I reached out to them so many times then, and I have reached out to them at ecomaine too, and I still can't get a response as to what's actually happening to it, which is, I don't know. If I could talk to them, I'm sure it would make me feel better.
I use them for plastics.
Yeah, for film plastics?
For packaging plastics.
Like packaging, those ones I feel better about. But then they got some really, really weird ones.
Like for snack bags and for,
Yeah, the snack bags,
various types.
and those ones sometimes I think go right back to the snack bag companies. Because I know we had a partnership with Lay's, Pepsi, Lay's, dog bags, or another one, like dog food bags. Colgate was working with them. So there are certain brands, I think, that directly work with them, that it works. Tom's of Maine, yeah. They're owned by Colgate Palmolive, so it was all kind of going back to the same thing. But, yeah, that was, I don't know. I don't feel confident in my answer, I guess, with them. And it depends on what they're processing. The cigarette butts really is questionable to me. I'm kind of confused by that. But anyway, any other questions? Awesome. Thank you all. Yeah.